Welcome back, little sinners. The flames have fed well on the tale of Dr. Whitmore, but the tome is never full. It hungers for more. More sin, more sorrow, more screams. Tonight, we turn a page steeped in rust and rot, a tale stitched together from burlap, bone, and betrayal. One that begins in a forgotten patch of soil, where the fields grow crooked and the scarecrows bleed. This is the story of a harvest cursed and a heart that never should have beat. This is episode 2, Harvest of the Hollowed. They called it Hollow's End, a patch of farmland tucked deep in the outskirts of a nowhere town. No GPS signal, no neighbors, no future. The last to own it was Silas Grange, a reclusive farmer with a voice like rusted nails and a temper to match, but he wasn't always that way. Once, Silas had been different. A young man who inherited his grandfather's land with dreams of making something pure from the soil. He married Eleanor, a woman whose laugh could make even the hardest winter feel warm. They had a son, Thomas. For a time, the Grange family was whole, but farms are hungry things. They demand everything. Year after year, the harvests failed. The banks circled like vultures. Silas worked himself to bone and sinew, dawn to dusk, bleeding into that soil. And while he bled, Eleanor grew lonely. Thomas grew resentful, and the land grew bitter. Eleanor found comfort elsewhere. A traveling salesman who came through twice a season. A man with soft hands and softer promises. Silas discovered them in the barn one autumn evening. His wife, another man. His world shattered like dried corn husks. But worse was yet to come. Thomas, his boy, his only son, stood between them. 14 years old, defiant, and in his eyes, Silas saw the truth he'd been too blind to notice. The boy's jaw, his eyes, nothing of Silas in him at all. He's not even yours, Eleanor spat. He never was. Something in Silas broke that night, not with a scream, but with silence. The kind of silence that precedes the reaping. Silas didn't kill them in rage. No, he killed them with purpose. If the crops wouldn't grow from honest work, perhaps they'd grow from honest sin. Eleanor was first. He strangled her in the barn where she betrayed him, then dragged her body to the south field and buried her deep, mixed her blood with the soil, whispered prayers older than the town itself. Thomas tried to run, made it to the edge of the property before Silas caught him. The boy who wasn't his, the living reminder of his failure, buried in the north field, among the corn that had never grown. But Silas didn't stop there. He cut out his own heart, still beating, still bleeding, and wrapped it in barbed wire, placed it inside the scarecrow's chest. As his human body collapsed and withered, Silas Grange ceased to be a man, and became something else entirely. The transformation was complete. Silas was no longer flesh and blood. He was burlap and rage, wood and wire, a guardian stitched together by hatred and fed by the land itself. And the moment he stood on that post for the first time, he felt it. Growth. Where Eleanor lay buried, the soil turned rich and dark. Where Thomas rotted, the corn began to grow. Tall, twisted, wrong, but growing. His family hadn't just failed him in life. They would serve him in death. They were fertilizer. The first harvest of a farm that would finally thrive. 3 days later, Daniel returned. The salesman, Eleanor's lover, looking for the woman who promised to run away with him. Silas was waiting. The scarecrow walked for the first time that night. Daniel's screams echoed across the empty fields as he was dragged into the corn. his body planted right beside Thomas, right beside his bastard son, and the corn grew taller. For years, Hollow's End thrived in its own twisted way. Trespassers became fertilizer, curious neighbors who came looking, drifters seeking shelter, teenagers on dares, each one planted, each one feeding the cursed soil. The crops grew abundant, but wrong. The corn was black at the center. The sunflowers wept a substance like blood. Nothing that grew there could be eaten, but everything that died there made it grow stronger. Silas didn't need to eat, didn't need to sleep. He only needed to guard, to harvest, to feed the land that had finally accepted him. But by the 2000s, something changed. People stopped coming. Rumors spread through the town. Stories of missing persons, of screams in the night, of a scarecrow that moved, that hunted. The farm began to die again. Not from Silas's failure this time, but from starvation. The land needed fresh bodies, fresh blood, fresh pain. And it had been so long since anyone had been foolish enough to visit. By 2024, Hollow's End was a ghost story, a legend, a dare that no one was brave enough to take. Until Halloween night. Until 4 teenagers decided to change that. Halloween night, 2024. A house party in full swing. Red cups, terrible costumes, music too loud. The kind of night where bad decisions feel like good stories. That's when someone dared 4 teenagers to visit Hollow's End Farm. Every teen in the neighborhood knew about it. The abandoned property at the edge of town where supposedly a farmer had gone crazy and murdered his family. They called it Hollow's End Farm. No one had lived there in decades. No one dared to go there. Except tonight. Katie, blonde, confident. The kind of girl who never backed down from a dare, was the first to agree. Jerome, always chasing views and validation, saw an opportunity. He'd go live on TikTok, document everything, proof for the doubters, content for the algorithm. Ashley, Katie's best friend, quieter but always loyal, followed reluctantly. She had a bad feeling about this. And Mark, the jock with more bravado than brains, wasn't about to look scared in front of his friends. So, fueled by cheap beer and cheaper thrills, the 4 of them piled into Mark's car and drove toward Hollow's End. The land had been starving for so long. Tonight, it would feast. The dirt road to the farm was overgrown, barely visible. The GPS lost signal half a mile back, but Mark kept driving, branches scraping the sides of his car like skeletal fingers. When they finally stopped, the headlights illuminated a sight straight out of a nightmare. The cornfield stretched endlessly into the dark, dry brittle stalks that looked more like broken bones than crops. To the left, a field of dead sunflowers drooped like mourners at a funeral, their faces turned towards the ground. And ahead, the barn, old, decrepit, leaning to one side as if the earth itself was trying to swallow it. Jerome was already out of the car, phone raised high, going live. His viewers flooded in. Comments rolled across the screen, warnings, jokes, disbelief. Katie posed next to the barn for selfies, laughing at how decrepit everything looked. Ashley forced a smile, but her hands were shaking. Something about this place felt wrong. Mark threw a rock at the barn door. Nothing happened. Just an old dead farm. Nothing to be scared of. Then Katie saw it. At the edge of the cornfield stood a scarecrow. Tall, impossibly still, but something about it made their laughter die in their throats. It was leaning against a wooden post, but not tied to it. just leaning, like it was resting, like it was watching. Its head was a burlap sack, stitched with crude features. 2 X's for eyes, a jagged line for a mouth stretched wide as if screaming. Its clothes were tattered, stained with something dark that definitely wasn't mud. And its chest, it almost looked like it was moving. Jerome zoomed in with his phone camera, narrating for his viewers. The comments exploded with warnings, but he ignored them. Mark laughed and picked up a rock, hurling it at the scarecrow. It hit the chest with a dull thud. Katie walked closer, her bravado masking her unease. She placed her hand on the scarecrow's chest, then jerked back. She joked that it had a heartbeat. She wasn't wrong, but they were too busy laughing, too busy mocking, too busy taking pictures to notice how naturally the scarecrow leaned on that post, how its head was angled toward them, how it seemed to be staring despite having no eyes, how its stitched mouth curved up just slightly, like it was smiling. The air grew cold, not just cool, cold. The kind that creeps into your bones and makes your breath visible. And then they heard it. Voices, whispers, coming from deep within the cornfield. Betrayer, liar, failure. They blamed it on the wind, tried to laugh it off, but the sound had gotten under their skin. They were ready to leave now. The fun was over. Jerome was still live, his viewers hearing the voices too. The comments turned frantic. Run! Leave! Get out! They started back towards the car, walking faster now. The cornfield on both sides seemed to lean in closer. The stalks rustled despite there being no wind. Then, Jerome screamed. Not a shout, not a yelp. A blood-curdling primal scream that cut through the night like a blade. One moment he was there. The next, something yanked him into the corn. Katie, Ashley, and Mark spun around just in time to see his hand disappear between the stalks. His screams echoed, desperate, terrified, and then wet. The sound of tearing, of breaking, of a body being torn apart by something that hadn't fed in far too long. Then, silence. His phone lay in the dirt, screen cracked but still glowing, still live. The view counter climbing, hundreds, thousands of people watching. Katie picked it up with trembling hands and looked at the last few seconds of footage. The camera had captured everything, a flash of burlap, long twisted fingers ending in blackened claws, Jerome's face, frozen in absolute terror. And then the camera spinning as he was dragged deep into the corn. The last frame showed the scarecrow's face, filling the screen before it went dark. The comments were in chaos. Call the police. Is this real? Someone help them. The corn started to move again, not from wind, from something inside it, something that had just tasted blood for the first time in years. The scarecrow emerged from the stalks, no longer on its post. Its burlap face was stained dark, its claws dripped, and it was walking toward them. They ran. Katie grabbed Ashley's hand and they sprinted through the dead sunflowers, stems snapping beneath their feet. Mark was ahead, shouting for them to get to the barn. Behind them, the scarecrow walked, not running. It didn't need to run. It knew this land. Every inch, every shadow, every place they could hide. They were already trapped. Mark reached the barn first and slammed his shoulder into the door. It gave way with a groan of ancient wood. Ashley tumbled inside after him, but Katie tripped. Her foot caught on a twisted root and she went down hard, Jerome's phone flying from her hands. She scrambled to get up, but the scarecrow was already there, looming over her, blocking out the moon. Ashley screamed Katie's name from the barn doorway. Mark grabbed her, trying to pull her back inside. "We have to help her," Ashley sobbed, but Mark saw the truth in Katie's eyes. The acceptance, the terror. There was no helping her. The scarecrow lifted Katie by her throat. Her feet dangled above the ground as she clawed at its arms that felt like wood and wire and something worse. It carried her into the barn through a gap in the back wall, carried her past the place where Eleanor had betrayed Silas, past the spot where his human body had died. It laid her on the ground almost gently, and then it began its work. Katie tried to scream, but no sound came out. She could only watch in frozen horror as the scarecrow pressed its clawed hand against the dirt floor. The earth opened like a mouth. Roots emerged, writhing like serpents. They wrapped around her wrists, her ankles, pulled her down into the soil beneath the barn. She struggled, but the roots were strong. They burrowed into her skin, drinking her screams, her tears, her terror. The last thing Katie saw was the scarecrow's burlap face staring down at her. The stitched mouth, the X-marked eyes, and then the earth swallowed her whole. Another body, another harvest, another soul to feed the cursed land. Mark and Ashley huddled in the barn, listening to Katie's screams die away. They knew she was gone, knew they were next. Mark's hands shook as he pulled out his phone. Still no signal, but he had to try something. That's when they heard it. Footsteps. Inside the barn. Getting closer. "The back wall," Ashley whispered. "There's a gap." I saw it when we came in. They moved as quietly as they could through the darkness, weaving between old equipment and rotted hay bales. The footsteps followed, always just behind them. Close enough to hear, close enough to feel. Mark reached the gap first, a section where the wooden slats had rotted away, big enough to squeeze through. Barely. He pushed Ashley toward it. "Go! I'm right behind you!" Ashley squeezed through, splinters tearing her clothes and skin. She tumbled out into the dead sunflower field, landing hard. Mark was halfway through when the scarecrow grabbed him. Claws sank into his calf, tearing through muscle. Mark screamed and kicked backward, his foot connecting with something that felt like a skull wrapped in burlap. The scarecrow's grip loosened, just for a second. It was enough. Mark yanked himself through the gap, his legs screaming in pain, blood soaking through his jeans. He fell on top of Ashley, and they both scrambled to their feet. The car. They had to get to the car. They ran through the darkness, Mark limping badly, leaving a trail of blood. Ashley supported him, her own arm bleeding from deep scratches she'd gotten squeezing through the barn wall. Behind them, the scarecrow emerged from the barn. Slow, methodical, patient. It had fed tonight. 2 souls, 2 bodies for the soul. But it wanted more. They reached the car, Mark's keys somehow still in his pocket. Ashley grabbed them, her hand shaking so badly she could barely hold them. Mark collapsed against the car door, his leg giving out. "Go! Start it!" Ashley fumbled with the keys, dropping them once, twice. The scarecrow was crossing the field, 20 feet away, 15. Finally, the key slid home. The engine roared to life. Mark threw himself into the passenger seat as Ashley floored it. The car lurched forward, tires spinning in the dirt. In the rearview mirror, Ashley saw it, the scarecrow, standing in the middle of the road, not chasing, just watching. Its burlap face turned toward them, its head tilted, like it was memorizing them. like it knew they'd be back. They made it to the main road before Mark passed out from blood loss. Ashley drove straight to the hospital screaming for help. The police came, asked questions, took statements. Ashley told them everything. The scarecrow, the corn, Jerome and Katie, all of it. They didn't believe her, thought it was trauma, shock, Halloween pranks gone wrong, until they checked Jerome's TikTok. The live stream was still up, still recording. Millions of views now. Millions of people who had watched in real time as something impossible dragged Jerome into the corn. The video went viral. News crews descended on the small town. Investigators, FBI. Everyone wanted to know what really happened at Hollow's End Farm. A week later, they sent a team to the farm. They found Jerome's body in the cornfield, half buried, torn apart. They found Katie's body beneath the barn, roots grown through her like she'd been there for years, not days. The forensics team couldn't explain it. The coroner couldn't explain it. No one could. So they did what people always do when faced with things they can't understand. They destroyed it. The farm was condemned, declared a public hazard, and on a cold November morning, they burned it to the ground. The barn went first, ancient wood catching like kindling, then the fields, the corn, the sunflowers, everything. Flames consumed decades of cursed growth, and in the center of it all, the scarecrow burned. Fire ate through the burlap face, consumed the rotted clothing, turned the wooden frame to ash. When the flames finally died and the smoke cleared, investigators walked through the ashes, looking for remains, for evidence, for answers. They found bones, so many bones, buried throughout the property. Decades worth of victims, some identified, most not. But in the center of where the scarecrow had stood, they found something else. Something that shouldn't have survived the fire. A human heart, still intact, still wrapped in barbed wire, still beating. Thump, 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 thump. The investigators stared at it in horror. One of them reached down to touch it. The heart stopped, just for a moment, then started again. Faster now. Stronger, because Silas Grange had never been just the scarecrow. He was the land itself, the soil, the roots, the curse that fed on betrayal and grew on blood. You can burn the guardian, you can scatter the ashes, but the heart still beats, and the curse still hungers, and somewhere in soil that will never be clean, in earth that will never forget, something waits to grow again. And so ends the tale of Hollow's End, a farm fed by betrayal and watered with blood. Silas Grange built a prison from his pain, but pain, like roots, grows deeper than any grave. It spreads, it feeds, it waits. The farm is gone, the scarecrow is ash, but that heart still beats among the ruins, still wrapped in wire, still bound to the cursed soil. Another page burned into the Scorched Scriptures, another soul collected, another warning left in ashes. The tone is pleased, but it's far from full. Until next week, keep your ears open, keep your hearts guarded, because some harvests never truly end.